Hello and welcome to another edition of the Legal Geeks. In fact, it looks like it's a vacation edition of the Legal Geeks. Aloha, Josh. How are you?
Aloha, Jessica. How are you?
I'm great. I wish I really were on vacation somewhere sunny and warm. Instead, it's still snowing here in Madison. How about you?
I am great. California is very pretty right now, so we're in the high 60s, low 70s, depending on the day, and some people are even brave enough to put on shorts. So nice. It's an adventure.
70s, that is short weather. You crazy warm weather people. You don't know real warm weather. Or when shorts are appropriate, I should say. So, okay, there's an obvious reason besides just the fact that Hawaiian shirts are always fabulous, and I'm going to pretend that I'm heading to the beach. But there is a specific topical, legitimate reason why we're dressed up like this today, not just because we felt like wearing our resort wear, our cabana wear. And that is because we are here to discuss an awesome show from the 80s, a show that I loved growing up as a kid, and not just because I only had CBS as the only channel we had on our TV. And that show is, drum roll, Josh, you want to say?
Magnum PI. It's amazing. If you talk to Gen Xers, and I've noticed this with some women who are in their 50s, because when Magnum was on, they were in their 20s. Yeah. Absolutely love Tom Selleck. Yeah. I was with my aunt yesterday, and she basically had all 8 seasons memorized. She can talk about Magnum like I can talk about Star Trek. I was super impressed. And she's not the first to have done that. So there's yes.
Tom Selleck
strikes a chord for.
Yes, I think there are a lot of girls from a younger age on up through 20s, 30s, probably 40s and 50s that he made quite the impression on.
Yeah, and it's him. He is important because he didn't wear glitter. He wasn't some brooding teenage vampire. He was a man. He was a Navy SEAL, the way it should be.
He was, and he and Burt Reynolds, I think, the only 2 men who can pull off the mustache without looking like they belong in a porn movie. So for that reason alone, I love the 2 of them.
I'll trust your judgment there.
All right, so we're not here just to walk down memory lane, although I could talk Magnum PI and Simon and Simon and some of those other awesome 80s shows forever. We're actually here to discuss some possible legal issues that came up in Magnum PI. And let's see, we're going to start off first, of course, with Magnum's unusual living situation and how he lived and worked for Robin Masters. I got a little vague on that, but he did something. He lived at Robin Masters' mansion, right?
Well, in the show, it's referred to as Robin's Nest, and it's on the island of Oahu. And in the opening, it talks about how Magnum woke up and he was in his 30s and decided to get out of the Navy because he spent, his entire adult life in the Navy, Annapolis, fighting in Vietnam, and kind of wanted to change. And Robin Masters is a fictional, famous writer, and so think of all the greats that we have running around today, and he's like a composite, and travels the world. It's never in any one place because of the way he writes.
Ah.
And Magnum starts staying in the guest house, serving as the chief of security for Robin Masters. But this is where things get funky rent-wise. Is he a tenant or is he a guest? And so I started looking at some of the Hawaiian law on their renters' rights and how things work. And you have to think, there's a lot of general landlord-tenant issues here.
Sure.
First, when you start looking at just the obligations of rent, and this is, under the Hawaiian Code, the landlord and the tenant can agree to any consideration not otherwise prohibited by law as rent. So, okay. So, staying in the guest house and providing services for Robin, in security and consulting, doing the occasional rescue mission to Italy to go save some, little darling who was being held by mobsters, that could all be viewed as payment in a trade for services. And while this starts touching on some like entourage type themes with just guys living with other dudes because one of them's loaded and they just help them out, when you look at like the mega rich, the mega powerful, Robin Masters probably didn't need to collect rent. Probably didn't care because he was already loaded. What he wanted was the service and he wanted the help. And so you have Magnum staying there rent free providing services for Robin and doing side work so that way he can actually buy food, and he's constantly broke all the time. So you have the rent issue, and then you get into the terms of the agreement, and that should be in writing. But if it isn't in writing under, again, the Hawaiian Code, then you're starting to look at something that should be as a month-to-month or even a week-to-week period as well, because they apparently don't have, there's like no signed contract that's ever talked about, which then brings into the statute of frauds issue as well. But you can start...
Right? Anything to do with real property should be in writing. Is that why you're saying it should be in writing? Okay.
Correct. But you can start looking at performance and how they're doing things, and you could probably go like, because of, again, you think somebody who is super loaded and has all that money would have lawyers going like, hey, let's come up with a cocktail type agreement. But this was, 1980, and the world was different back then, and they probably just went with like, hey, why don't you take care of this for me and stay here because you just got out of the Navy and you're looking for something to do. It probably went down like that, but those are the legal issues that jump out right out of the gate.
Higgins, to me, doesn't seem that loosey-goosey. I feel like he actually would have made Magnum, sign several things in blood before he could actually move in. Higgins was he wasn't going to let any slack happen, Yeah,
well, he's and John Hillerman, who's a Texan, who did a wonderful British accent.
Yeah.
Fun actor, retired in 2009, 2010, finally retired. But they had a lot of fun with him and showing his diversity to act because they had him play two different half-brothers to Higgins. That his dad in World War I, and there's the wonderful stories that, ended up sleeping with the nurse, and having the American half-brother who was from Texas, and then sleeping with, an Irish woman, and ending up with an Irish priest half-brother. And he played his own brothers, doing the different makeup and everything. And so, neat actor, because it showed his diversity and what he could do.
I saw all those Magnums, but I do not remember that. That's really funny. I need to go back and look for those, because I loved Higgins. He was great.
It's funny watching the stories unfold. They have him, by the time of the fourth season, saying, "Oh my God," in each episode, multiple times in shock. So that almost becomes his tagline. And by the time of the fourth season, they're like hammering that pretty hard.
Yeah. It's funny, I have to mention really quickly in the side, I'm reading a book right now on Edgar Rice Burroughs, the author of John Carter and Tarzan, one of my favorite authors. He actually, in his later years, lived in Hawaii, and in fact, he was playing tennis and actually witnessed the attack on Pearl Harbor. And as a result, he actually signed up, he was the oldest U.S. war correspondent ever. He was 61 and actually became a war correspondent, even though at the time, he was the most successful author in the world. It obviously, seeing that attack made an impression on him, and so he actually became a war correspondent. But maybe a little bit of Robin Masters is based on him.
Yeah, so, and also one of the big issues throughout the story is Higgins really Robin Masters?
Right.
And by the final episode, he says he's Robin Masters and that he was paying an actor to be Robin Masters, but they leave it unresolved, so you don't know. And all the times that you see Robin Masters, it's just like the hands.
Right.
Or like the back, like when we first see him, it's kind of a Charlie's Angel-esque, he's on the airplane, and you only see like the back of his head, and there's the attractive woman, making breakfast in the airplane, so they had some fun with that.
Well, speaking of flights, there was obviously a pilot who played a big role in the TV show. One of my favorites was TC, and he was always flying Magnum around. Did they ever have any agreement you think worked out?
They had oral agreements about Magnum paying for gas and paying for TC services, and that seemed to be a major bone of contention because Magnum's not paying back his buddy, because Magnum was a Navy SEAL, TC was a Marine along with Rick, and so they served together. They were POWs together, for 3 unpleasant months. And so you have they're good friends, but big issues with, dude, you're not paying me for all this stuff. So when you look at that, for those services rendered for flights, there's a statute of frauds issue because they're not signing agreements because, hey, they're war buddies.
Right.
But you can get around the statute of fraud issue because of performance. TC performs, flies around, helps Magnum, keeps taking bullets through the windshield throughout the different seasons, crashes the helicopter once, so there's that. And so you can get into an unjust enrichment scenario with Magnum got all the benefit of TC services and didn't get, and needed to get paid for them.
Yeah. All right, so TC brought a claim for TC.
Yes, but he could recover, and if Magnum actually was making money to pay him back.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem with Magnum would have been collecting. You could get a judgment against Magnum, but actually collecting it would have been hard since he never seemed to have much money. Okay, how about were there ever due process issues that were ever raised by any of the episodes?
A bunch, because they run around, as a private investigator, war heroes who go out and are fighting crime, and you can start touching on due process issues because you're starting to cross into law enforcement at that point. Yeah. Well, the big one, the big one was the two-part opening to the third season with Did You See the Sunrise? And which was a wonderful two-part series, and it deals with being POWs, a KGB agent who was in Vietnam torturing them, TC being programmed in present day or 1982 Hawaii. A naval officer who's one of Magnum's buddies is murdered with a car bomb in Magnum's Ferrari, and when they realize that Ivan, the bad guy KGB agent, is in Hawaii, they want to go arrest him, but they can't because the Soviets say he's a Bulgarian ambassador, and so diplomatic immunity issues. Yeah. So Magnum, they stage like a little car accident, and he gets him out of the car, takes him into the woods, and after Ivan lectures him about, he knows him better than his mother does because he tortured him for 3 months and knew that he didn't have the guts to do anything, Magnum then turns around very slowly and shoots him. Yeah. And that's the way it ends. And Archer did a parody of that with the exact same shot by shot with Archer, hunting down an Irish mob boss who was replacing chemotherapy drugs with Zima. And so when instead of asking, did you see the sunrise, was, did you see Regis this morning? And then shoots the Irish mob boss. So there's been couple pop culture references in it. So as an attorney, I know I should be upset with a private citizen cold-bloodedly killing another human being. But it was the Cold War. They weren't playing by the rules to begin with. They had done an assassination attempt on the Japanese prince. There was concern that they would go after President Reagan or Prime Minister Thatcher, so therefore, do we let him get away with murder? So on a due process level, it's totally wrong. We should not accept that. But the foreign policy reality of the situation with what we were dealing with and spycraft at the time and those sort of things is like, no, I'm cool with that. I can accept that. So it's a huge, I know I shouldn't go, I'm okay with that. And it was a very great way to end it because it shocked a lot of people with that ending. They actually did two versions of the ending.
Oh, it surprised people.
Yeah. So, but
I remember seeing that as a kid, and obviously, the legal issues I certainly didn't think about at the time, but it did have such an impact on me that I actually think about that episode, especially when there's a sunrise. It will trigger that thought a lot. It had made quite the impression on me, and so I have thought about that at least 50 times in my lifetime, if not more. Just randomly it will pop into my head. So that was quite a big moment on the show, very dramatic moment for the show.
Well, that they also look at how Magnum is portrayed, because frequently throughout the series, it's, I have a plan, what could possibly go wrong, and everything goes horribly wrong. This is supposed to be a Navy SEAL. Yeah. And Tom Selleck in that did such a powerful job of looking very focused, very intent, no emotion after being challenged, you're a wuss, you don't have what it takes, and shoots him. Mm-hmm. And it's like, blood. So it's like you watch, it's like, great. That might have been, he won an Emmy. It might have been the third season or it might have been the fourth. I need to look it up, but he won an Emmy one of those years. So that
should be for that.
But huge due process issues.
Yeah, huge concerns. Well, is there any unwritten law that Magnum PI addresses that the rest of us are missing out on?
Yeah, and I would call it man law. However, there's other ways to look at it, such as, debts of honor, because the relationship that you see between, it's the bromance between, the four characters that you see, with Magnum and Higgins being the main two, and TC and Rick being, constant recurring characters, sometimes with episodes dedicated or focused on themselves. But there's a esprit de corps between all of them and a loyalty. Despite the bickering, they also have each other's backs. And one that was very interesting was, I believe, in the fourth season, called Letter to a Duchess, or To the Duchess, in which Higgins was really into a British, royalty who was a widow, and she was staying at the estate, and he wrote her a letter saying, like, join me for a romantic dinner, didn't sign it, and she thinks it's from Magnum. And so she shows up at Magnum's doorstep all dressed up, and he's in, T-shirts and shorts making chili dogs. And, in the, after talking to Higgins afterwards, when he realizes, dude, no, it's like, I'm not interested in her. I was not trying to get in on that. And Higgins going like, well, we don't want to embarrass her, and she's into you and not me, therefore I'll take the hit.
Aww.
And Magnum's point of view was, no, so again, you see like the British honor versus the American dude. Let's go talk to her, let's work this out, and she'll know. And it ends with him, since she's enamored with him acting like a royal schmuck on purpose and not going to her goodbye so Higgins could, show his feelings as much as he could with the stiff British upper lip. And so you have those unwritten man law.
Of course, there's female versions of that as well. But yes, Magnum PI was very guy-centric, so it would not show up there. But yes, we have our woman law as well. That's definitely comparable, obviously, in Chicks Before something. But yes, they were good about that. And the guys together, and obviously the bonds that held them together, it was very sweet. So, and they had the short shorts, and I love the short shorts and the Hawaiian shirts.
They are classy. They are classy, and they were in Hawaii. I mean, there's other fun things with it. It's a time capsule of the '80s, and being able to watch it and see from the styles, the fashions, political overtones of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it is fascinating. But as a PI, that you touch on all these different legal issues, from legitimate search and what a PI could get away with versus what the police could do.
Mm-hmm.
And then little tributes to things like Hawaii Five-0 and others that they did as well. So it was all good. All good.
A great show. It was a ton of fun. Tom Selleck is a total babe. I, of course, also loved him as Richard in Friends. And so now he's in that, what is it, Blue Blood or something? But I don't think he has a mustache. And without the mustache, it's just not the same. So, you can find mustache.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, my father has one. My father actually looks very Tom Selleck, so it's a little weird seeing that. So, yes. So I don't know if I can turn into my own dad. So yeah, I'm not sure about that.
We all turn into our parents eventually. But on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to say aloha. I think I need to go watch the Magnum PI and some other awesome 80s TV shows. So thanks for another awesome episode, Josh.
Mohala, Jessica. And stay geeky, America. Stay geeky.